Okay, let's unpack this. Finding effective, safe ways to manage pain is
Well, it's one of the biggest challenges in healthcare, right?
absolutely huge. I mean, you just look at the numbers.
Yeah, chronic pain alone affects, what, like a third of people in the U.S.? It's massive.
And then you layer on the opioid crisis. It's devastating. Over 80,000 deaths a year. It's staggering.
Often linked to the very treatments meant to help. It just shows how badly we need something else.
We desperately need new options, things that give real pain relief, but, without all the baggage of opioids, the addiction, the tolerance buildup.
Needing higher and higher doses.
Exactly. And those really difficult physical side effects, too, like constipation. There's a whole cascade.
Right. And that brings us perfectly to the focus for this deep dive today. You've shared some fascinating material about a new compound. It's called SBI 810.
That's the one. Developed by scientists over at Duke University School of Medicine. Okay, so our mission today is to really get into the source material, understand what makes SBI 810 tick, how it's supposed to work differently, what the early research actually shows.
And maybe why it's generating some real buzz as a potential non-opioid approach.
Yeah, trying to figure out what's really going on here with this potential new direction.
Sifting through the data, yeah.
So maybe let's start by digging a bit deeper into the problem itself. Opioids, we know they work for severe pain, but why are they so risky?
Well, it's interesting, scientifically speaking. Traditional opioids are. They're pretty broad. They hit opioid receptors, yes, but those receptors are everywhere.
Not just in the pain pathways.
Not at all. They're on lots of different cells, involved in lots of different processes throughout the body. And that's the core issue.
Oh, okay.
Because they interact so widely, you get this whole range of effects. Activating reward pathways that drives the addiction potential. Constantly hitting the receptors leads to tolerance. Affecting the gut causes those constipation issues.
So you can't really isolate just the pain relief.
It's incredibly difficult with those traditional mechanisms. You hit the pain target, but you also hit all these other things too.
Like trying to fix one leaky pipe by just flooding the entire house. A bit messy.
That's a pretty good analogy, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's exactly where SBI 810 is trying to be fundamentally different.
Right.
The sources are clear. They see this as a new class of medicine.
Engineered to be more targeted, smarter.
Exactly. Smarter than those older, broader approaches.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. If it's not hitting everything like opioids do, how does it manage that? What's the specific mechanism they're looking at?
So this compound, SBI 810, it goes after a completely different target, a receptor called neurotensin receptor 1, NTSR1 for short.
NTSR1, okay. But where is that found?
The research shows it's strategically located. It's on the sensory neurons, the ones that actually detect pain signals out in the body. And it's also found within the spinal cord in the brain, where those pain signals get processed and interpreted.
So it's zooming in on a specific player in the pain system that opioids kind of ignore.
Pretty much. But the real clever part, the real innovation here, is how it interacts with NTSR1. They call the approach biased agonism.
Biased agonism. Okay, what does that mean in simple terms?
Think of the receptor like a control panel, maybe. Not just an on-off switch,
Yeah.
but something that can send out a few different signals depending on how you press the buttons.
Right.
Traditional drugs might just mash all the buttons at once. Biased agonism means SBI 810 is designed to selectively press just one specific button on that NTSR1 panel.
Okay. And which signal are they targeting?
They figured out it's the biorestin 2 signal. That specific pathway seems to be the one linked to pain relief.
Ah, the key pathway.
Exactly. And crucially, by only activating that signal and avoiding activating the other signals NTSR1 could potentially send out.
You sidestep the bad stuff.
That's the goal. You aim to bypass the pathways that might cause those unwanted side effects or the euphoria that leads to addiction. It's about isolating the benefit.
That's a really elegant concept, finding just the pain relief switch on this specific receptor. Wow, and you mentioned it has dual action.
Yes, that's another important point from the sources. It seems to affect both the peripheral nervous system, the nerves out in your limbs and body where pain often starts, and also the central nervous system, the spinal cord and brain.
So it works on both levels?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Which could be really powerful, offering strong relief where the pain originates, but maybe also dampening how the brain processes it centrally, all while keeping that specific targeting.
Okay, so that's the theory, the mechanism they're working with. Very sophisticated. But what did the early research actually show? The material mentions mouse studies.
Right. These are preclinical studies, mostly in mice so far. But the results are definitely what's generating the excitement. The big headline, SBI 810 provided strong pain relief by itself.
On its own, without needing anything else.
Correct. In these animal models, it showed a clear analgesic effect.
And did they test different kinds of pain, like not just one specific type?
They did. They used models that mimic common human pain conditions. Pain from surgical cuts, like post-op pain.
Okay.
Pain from bone fractures, and also nerve injury pain, neuropathic pain, which is notoriously hard to treat.
Right. And it helped across the board.
The researchers reported seeing clear signs that the mice were experiencing less discomfort. Things like guarding an injured paw less, or showing fewer facial grimaces. These are standard ways researchers assess pain levels in animals.
Interesting. How did it stack up against existing drugs in these tests?
That's where it gets even more compelling. According to the study details, SBI 810 actually performed better than oliceridine in some tests.
Oliceridine, that's a newer opioid used in hospitals sometimes, right?
Exactly. And SBI 810 seemed to cause fewer signs of distress in the mice compared to it in some situations. And maybe even more significantly, it worked better than gabapentin.
Gabapentin is huge for nerve pain. Lots of people take that.
It is. But SBI 810 outperformed it in these models. And here's a really key difference they noted. Unlike gabapentin, SBI 810 did not seem to cause sedation or memory issues.
Wow. That's massive, because those side effects are a huge problem with gabapentin, especially long-term.
A really big deal, especially for chronic nerve pain sufferers. And thinking back to the mechanism, what about those classic opioid side effects we're trying to avoid? Tolerance, addiction potential.
Yes, the big ones.
What did they find there? This is probably one of the most exciting parts reported in the sources. The material explicitly states that SBI 810 did not cause tolerance with repeated use in the mice.
Meaning they didn't need higher doses over time.
Correct. They got the same pain relief effect without needing to escalate the dose, which is just a fundamental problem with opioids. And crucially, it also didn't seem to trigger that euphoric high.
The thing that really drives misuse and addiction.
Exactly. It didn't show signs of causing that reward pathway activation in the way opioids do.
Incredible. I mean, if that translates to humans, that's the dream, isn't it? Was there also something about using it with opioids?
Yes, another interesting angle they explored. When they combined SBI 810 with small doses of traditional opioids.
Small doses, okay.
They found SBI 810 significantly boosted the opioid's effectiveness. It acted synergistically.
So you could potentially use much less opioid.
That's the implication. Maybe a future use case involves combining SBI 810 with much lower, potentially safer doses of opioids, but still getting strong pain control, reducing the overall opioid burden.
Okay, so lots of promise in these early studies. Where does SBI 810 stand right now? What's the roadmap?
Yeah, it's crucial to manage expectations here. This is still very early stage. These are preclinical results, primarily mouse models.
Right, not in humans yet.
Not yet. The essential next step, according to the Duke researchers, is to try and move this into human clinical trials. That's the goal they're aiming for relatively soon.
And they're protecting this, patents and things.
Yes. The sources mentioned they've already secured multiple patents for the discovery, which is standard procedure as they move towards potential clinical development.
Makes sense. And who's backing this kind of research? It must be expensive.
This particular study got funding from some major players. The National Institutes of Health, NIH.
Okay, the main U.S. medical research agency.
Yep. And also the Department of Defense. So based on how it works and these initial findings, where do they see this potentially fitting in? What kind of pain could it treat?
It seems pretty broad, actually.
Yeah, the researchers seem optimistic about its potential across different types of pain. They talk about it being a safer, non-opioid option for acute pain, like after surgery, but also for those really difficult chronic conditions, like diabetic nerve pain.
Which affects so many people, and these findings, they're fresh off the press, basically.
Very recent. Published in the journal Cell, which is a top-tier scientific journal, on May 19th, 2025.
And there was a quote from the lead researcher.
Yes, the senior author, Dr. Ru Rongji. He summed it up nicely. He said, what makes this compound exciting is that it is both analgesic, meaning pain-relieving, and non-opioid.
Simple but powerful.
And he also emphasized that the target, NTSR1, is a promising target for treating acute and chronic pain.
That really does capture why this is getting attention, doesn't it? The potential for effective relief without the opioid risks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It encapsulates that dual promise perfectly, efficacy and safety.
So wrapping up our deep dive here, the key takeaway from the material on SBI 810 really seems to be that this could represent a genuinely new approach, a potential paradigm shift.
Yeah, its unique targeted mechanism hitting that biorestin-2 signal via NTSR1, combined with these promising early results in animals showing it works, and importantly, showing a lack of those major opioid-like side effects like tolerance and reward.
It offers some real hope, doesn't it, for safer, maybe more effective pain options down the line.
It really does point towards a future where maybe we can get powerful pain control by being super precise, almost like molecular surgery, decoupling the relief from all the collateral damage.
Exactly. Separating the good from the bad effects that have plagued us with older drugs. Okay, so here's a final thought for you, our listener, to mull over after hearing all this. Think about the journey. This massive, complex path a compound like SBI 810 still has ahead of it.
It's a long road.
From these encouraging lab results in mice, all the way through multiple phases of rigorous human trials, regulatory hurdles, manufacturing, just to potentially become something a doctor can prescribe.
Years, potentially many years, and a lot of investment.
Absolutely. But then think, if it does successfully make that journey, what could that truly mean? Not just for individuals living with pain every day, but for tackling the wider opioid crisis. It's a long shot, maybe, but the potential impact, it's huge.